City Council work session of January the 14th, 2025 in order. I want to welcome everybody here who's present and those who are joining us online for our first work session of 2025. Hope everyone had a happy holiday season and a new year. I apologize for my throat, but I'm getting over some kind of respiratory thing and I'm good to go. I sound bad. For those of you that don't know, these work sessions are for council to receive information and to discuss some issues that are impacting the city. We do not vote in this session, nor do we carry anything forward into our meeting at 7 o'clock. Public participation is welcome, but we would ask that you wait till after all the presentations and discussion items have been discussed and by council before we go to public comment. But with that, I'm going to go to the next item on the agenda, which is employee new hire recognitions. We have someone from the Capital Improvements Program, so JJ, we'll let Raul go there. You're up.
Good evening, council. I'd like to introduce you to Zara Sodergren. She is our new CIP coordinator, and she's joined us just about a week ago and already in it, digging into the system.
Welcome to the team.
Welcome. Glad to have you here.
Sure. Okay, next is Community Development Department, Kurt Freeze. You can introduce somebody or, oh, there it is.
I'm excited to say that we recruited in Munich and we found a planner in Germany, actually, who was a longtime planner, Christopher Clements in South Carolina. He's already hard and heavy with everything and he's been great to have you.
Welcome aboard. Great honor.
Love working with you. I'm excited.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Kurt, are you doing the GIS technician too?
I am. Yeah, I think so.
Oh, JJ, okay.
Mayor, Council, this is Kat Kirkland. She is a employee of InterDev, which is our GIS and IT contractor. So she's a full-time employee of theirs, but she is in-house full-time with us. She replaces Justin Giudini, who left earlier this year for a great opportunity. We hated to see him go. We're excited. I have Kat here. She's diving into the GIS system, doing some organization and things that we were really wanting to get done. And we're looking forward to launching into phase 2 of our GIS system rollout. Going into this year, coming out of the strategic planning session next week. We're excited to have her.
Yeah. Okay, next, Chief Rice, you got some people from the police department?
Mayor and Council. Good to see you all again today, manager, deputy city manager. I'm excited to announce that we have some new hires here. We have Dwight Bryant, he goes by David though. He has prior police experience. He's already through his special basic and into FGO already. And then we have Miss Allison Peachy. She comes to us from the Marine Corps after 8 years. And she's getting ready to go to the academy as well. And also we have Mr. Trevor Pullen. He was also in the Marines for 8 years, so we're more than excited to have them, and he's looking forward to going to the academy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your service.
Sorry. Yep. There we go.
Okay, next item is a presentation and update on a mural for our Marina restroom building. Under open.
Yes, we right here.
Okay. You knew she wasn't gonna. You know, it makes me tired.
Good evening, how are you all today? So Main Street Beaufort and has had a vision and we did a strategic plan back in 2019. And one of the initiatives was to put public art in our downtown. A mural always seemed like the right thing to start off with, or, you know, it seemed really well. Cultural District, they had been doing their benches and they have had 2-3 bench projects that we have
A lot of benches that are out there with a lot of different art. They wanted to kind of, let's do something else. So actually Brandon, helped, she was the liaison at the time. And this past year, they went through a whole process and we have chosen a mural and she's gonna tell you about the process and why the mural was chosen and what we were kind of thinking about. So I'm gonna leave it to her. It was her project and
Funny.
All right,
Hello, everyone. So the mural design came about, like she said, during a cultural district meeting, and they wanted to see more art downtown as well as Main Street Beaufort. And so the idea was put an RFQ out to all the local artists to do a mural for our bathroom that we have downtown that has a very, very big blank white wall. That is where all the motor coaches come in. So all of our visitors come in at that point. And so knowing the mural would appeal to many, we sent out the RFQ. We had over 35 qualified artists. They had to meet a minimum requirement of qualifications. And those artists came back with all kinds of images that depicted downtown, our city, and what we believe is important about our city. So the Cultural District Board went through all 35 applications, went through all 35 art, and they brought it down to just 3. Reached out to each one, had Zoom meetings with each artist, and then initially in the end, decided on one artist. And so as you can see, the contest was posted to social media, like I said, to 35. And once the finalists were chosen, we did interviews, and then the design art encompassed the history, the beauty, and the welcome to Beaufort. So the mural was stretched, the first section of the building, the limb will kind of go over the door, making it interactive. It will be a mural people can take pictures in front of, which is what we wanted. We wanted what's Instagrammable, so people can post all over social media about our beautiful city. And when they enter our beautiful city, it's something gorgeous for them to take a picture in front of. So there are 2 designs in your packet, or 3 designs actually. And so it's going to be a merging of these 3 designs. So the Cultural District, I met on Zoom with Julia, who is the artist, and they went through and changed a few things. So you'll have the waterfront image looking like our waterfront. They changed the colors for the Beaufort, and then it'll say SC underneath it. But this is a general idea of what it'll look like, with of course the limb of the live oak going over the door. So this beautiful art is, as we're excited to see.
That's the winner.
Yes, this is Julia. She is the mural artist, yes.
Funny thing is boats in the water.
So-
Sailboat, it's a boat. Sailboat's the water.
How is that limb going over the door?
you go back.
Like this right here.
I know, but that's a different.
I think it'd be
branch.
just like the continuation of this
Yes.
with the branch going on.
Okay, so the branch will continue. Okay.
the rest of the wall will stay white.
Yes. And there is opportunity in the future to continue if we wanted to, but as of right now, that's where it would.
Yeah, that's a comment that I was gonna make also. While it's beautiful to have it on that side, it really highlights it, there's nothing on the other side. But yeah, that's a great start.
I think we'll put paintings of council.
One, first, I guess congratulations to Julia for being selected as the winner. I like it all, really. But I guess I have one question, and that is, what happens in the event that we renovate those bathrooms? Was that on the agenda for the future? So if we did that, we'd lose this painting?
So the building is, as I know it, and has for many years, for us to renovate it, we'd have to tear it down totally and start all over. If you add to it, there's some opportunity, but we've also been told we probably will not be able to add to those buildings. So knowing that it's gonna stand for a little while, it will probably stand longer than the mural will be vibrant. So we could always incorporate more, but the intention is to continue putting murals and different art objects on buildings and open spaces downtown, just to create interest.
Yeah.
You know, and highlight.
I think it's a great idea. I guess that was my only concern, is as it's there, people get used to it, they like it, they talk about it, whatever, and then if in 3 years we have a plan to come in and knock that building down and build a new one, then unfortunately we would lose it. But I guess it sounds like we really don't have anything planned that would jeopardize this, and if it is, it's in the distant future to where.
I would think it's not in the near future. I think you might have an opportunity for a different building in that area to kind of do what we're thinking about. Well, we have no plans at this time.
Any project, if we design that parking lot and necessitate the demolition of these buildings and the construction of new ones, it's at least 2 to 3 years off, because you simply don't have the funding for it right now. So we have other needs in the form of the waterfront park that I think that building is gonna be safe for a few years. And even if it was, we could incorporate and we probably should incorporate with all of our public projects, an artistic element, public art element, and so.
The other thing is that this is your public restroom. So until we have another location for our public restrooms, I don't think this building is going anywhere for any.
Well, it looks really good. It looks like a life-size postcard.
Yeah. Bonnie, do you have?
No, other than, thank you, Ashley, for everything you did, to help facilitate this. And also explain to an older person, for people who use social media, certain elements that needed to be included in sizes and whatever, so that it would convey. So I really appreciate your expertise in that. You may explain it to the other people that don't understand it, or just know that she knows what she's doing.
Well, the idea is that you could stand as if you were, when you take the picture, as if you were walking on the path itself. So it incorporates you into the art.
Very nice. Ms. Rogers.
I have a question. Is the mural facing the water or facing the parking lot?
Parking lot. So if you're driving down Bay Street, you'll be able to see it. Well, I will say, and I'm just add one comment that was made was, there are parking spaces in front of there, so it may, it might have cars in front of it. But we feel you'll still be able to see it, and until we figure out reconfiguration, we may be able to incorporate something there to keep it open.
Any other comments, questions? Anybody from the public? Comments? Thank you. Next, we have a presentation on fiscal year 2024 annual comprehensive financial report. Alan?
Evening, Mayor and Council. Happy to introduce our audit partners, David Irwin from Audit and Jenkins. For a presentation that's more on the audit results, and I'll do a presentation more detail about our financial report, is kind of more detail on it.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Good to see you all again. Happy New Year. Again, my name is David Irwin, and I'm with Audit Jenkins. Again, I was the partner who oversaw this year's audit of the city's financial statements, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all this evening to discuss the results of this year's audit. Okay. I won't take up too much of your time, but again, the purpose of my presentation is to provide you all an overview of our independent audit report. Talk about the results of the 2 compliance reports that we issue in conjunction with the audit. I'll hit a few of the financial statement highlights again. Alan's going to go in a little deeper, but I will hit a few of the financial statement highlights. Discuss some information that the auditing standards requires that we communicate to you all, and then obviously to answer any questions that you all may have. Now, the financial statements themselves, they are the responsibility of management and members of council. As your independent external auditors, our responsibility is to issue an opinion on these statements. We conduct our audit in accordance with governmental auditing standards and generally accepted auditing standards. And I'm happy to say that we are issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on this year's report. Again, this is what you want. This is the highest level of assurance we provide your external auditor. What this means is that in our opinion, the financial statements are considered to be fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Again, as I mentioned earlier, in conjunction with the audit, there are two compliance reports that we issue. The first of which is a single audit report. Again, a single audit is a compliance audit that is required when an entity has over $750,000 of federal expenditures every year. The city had around $2.6 million of federal expenditures this year, the majority of which were your ARPA funds. As was the case with the financial audit, we are issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on your single audit as well. The second compliance report is called the Young Book Report. Again, this is a report on the city's internal controls and your compliance with various laws and regulations. And I'm happy to say that we do not have any audit findings for you last year, meaning we noted no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in the city's internal controls during our audit. And I believe I've mentioned this to you all before, but with how complex the financial reporting process has become, with all the changes that are being implemented each year, it makes it all the more impressive to be able to present you on audit that not only has a clean opinion, but also has no audit findings. So again, that's something that management and really everyone associated should be proud of. And to me, it's really a testament to the hard work done by your staff. I do want to thank your finance department. They did a great job again this year. They're always very accommodating, our audit team. They work hard to address all of our questions and get us all the necessary information that we need to get the audit finalized by the 12/31 deadline. So again, just kind of want to thank your staff for their hard work again this year. Now for a brief overview of your financial statements. Again, the city prepares what is called an annual comprehensive financial report, otherwise known as an ACFR. An ACFR requires the inclusion of additional information that goes above and beyond the basic financial reporting requirements. This document is submitted annually to the Government Finance Officer Association, otherwise known as GFOA, where they put it through a pretty stringent review process. They have a special review. Their professional staff review your document, but also a special review committee. And when they look at the city's ACFR, their goal is not to assess the financial health of the city. What they want to do is make sure that the necessary information is in this document so the readers of your financial statements can do so themselves. And through this review, the city has once again been awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. And that certificate is included in this year's report. And I believe this is the 17th year in a row that the city has received this certificate. So again, congratulations to you all on that. Your staff prepared this document. It's a very impressive report. And it's certainly something that you all should be proud of. So again, hats off to you all on that. As you look through this document, one section I always like to point out is the management discussion analysis. And again, Alan's going to hit on that a little later. But I always strongly encourage everyone to read the MD&A. The purpose of this section, the purpose of the MD&A is to make it easier for a broader audience to better understand the financial statements. And it does this by providing a narrative explanation of the financial statements from management's perspective. So if you have any questions about any fluctuations in financial activity, anything unique or unusual that occurred during the year, oftentimes you can find your answer within the MD&A. In addition, there's quite a bit of comparative information in this section. So there's financial information disclosed for not only FY24, but also FY23. And to me, that adds a lot of value to the reader. It gives you a much better understanding of your current year financial activity when you have those prior year numbers there for comparative purposes. So again, if you can, I would strongly encourage everyone to read the MD&A. Now, the city's basic financial statements, they are broken up into three components. The first of which is your government-wide statements. In your government-wide statements, they provide a broad view of the city's operations in a manner similar to what you would see in a private sector business. In this section, all the funds of the city are combined under a governmental activities column. But we have a slide on this next slide. Summarizes the city's financial activities from the government-wide perspective. But again, as you can see here, the city ended the year with assets and deferred outflows of resources of around $118 million. Of that amount, around $71 million are capital assets, net of accumulated depreciation. Again, when we talk about capital assets, that's land, buildings, machinery, equipment, vehicles, et cetera, that's owned by the city. In addition, including these assets, you all have about $40.5 million in cash and cash equivalents. Of that amount, around $11 million were restricted for things such as debt service and capital projects. Total liabilities and deferred inflows of resources were around $59 million. Of that amount, around 45 million are long-term in nature, meaning they're not due within the next fiscal year. Looking at your revenues, total revenues were around $40.2 million. That's an increase of about $5.8 million compared to FY23. Expenses were around $33.6 million, and that was an increase about $2.6 million compared to prior year. So this resulted in.
It's backwards in ours, so ours.
That was. Yeah, I saw that yesterday when I was going over the presentation. What you all have in yours, it was backwards. This is the correct. What you see on the slide here is the correct. Yeah. Y'all are paying attention. That's impressive. I'm happy to hear that. But yeah, I apologize. I sent what you all have to Alan about 2 weeks ago, and as I was going over the presentation yesterday, I saw that had flipped. But yeah, what you see on the screen is correct.
I had a little note, and I was like, okay, so what we're looking at here is we had less revenue.
No, you got $40.2 million in revenues this year and $33.6 million in expenses. Again, sorry about that. But again, this resulted in an increase in your net position of $6.6 million. And again, for comparative purposes, your net position increased by about $3.3 million compared to prior year. So again, all in all, a good year for the city from the NEY perspective. Revenues increased by about 17%, while expenses increased by about 8%. And again, this resulted in around a 13% increase in your net position. So again, if I'm in your shoes, this is a strong balance sheet, and again, you all are in good shape. But again, that's just a summary from the county-wide, the government-wide perspective. The second component of your financial statements are all these fund level statements. Again, the fund level, this is what you've all typically seen throughout the year. The fund level focuses on individual parts of the city's operations, and it reports the city's operations in more detail than that of the government-wide statements. And of all the funds that you all have, if I'm in your shoes, my primary focus is the general fund. Again, the general fund is the main operating fund of the city, and therefore it accounts for the majority of your revenues received in funds and spending. But we have a couple slides here, the first of which shows the general fund's revenues for the year. Again, this is just the general fund, but total revenues of the general fund are around $28.9 million. That's around a $4.6 million increase compared to FY23. Again, the three significant sources of revenues for you all, property taxes, licenses and permits, and intergovernmental revenue. Property taxes was around $9.6 million, while licensing and permits were around $7.9 million, and intergovernmental revenue was about $5.5 million for the year. This next slide shows the general fund's expenditures for the year by function. The expenditures were around $26.8 million. That's an increase of about $2.2 million compared to FY23. Again, no surprise, we would see that general government, law enforcement, and fire and emergency are your significant expense items. General government was around $6.5 million. Law enforcement was approximately $6.3 million, and fire and emergency was right at $6.9 million for the year. So when you factor in other financing sources and uses, such as the issuance of debt and transfers to and from other funds, the general fund's fund balance increased by about $3 million during the year for an ending balance of $14.6 million. And as you can see on this slide, it shows the fund balance history of the general fund over the past 5 years. Slides like these are always interesting to me, kind of see where you were compared to where things currently stand. And as you can see, you all have done a great job of increasing your fund balance over this 5-year period. 2020 was obviously a unique year due to COVID. But with everything that's gone on over the past 5 years and the economic uncertainty that has followed it, it makes it all the more impressive that you all have consistently been able to stay within budget and continue to increase your fund balance. So again, that's something that the council, management, finance, everyone again involved in the city should not only be proud of, but committed for. So hats off to you all on that. you know, when I talk about fund balance, you know, I always try to remind people that fund balance, you know, is not what you all have in the form of cash for discretionary spending. Fund balance is merely the difference between assets and liabilities, only a portion of which is cash on hand. Additionally, one thing to keep in mind, the general fund incurs expenditures of around $2.2 million per month. So you all ended the year with an unassigned fund balance equal to around 3.5 months worth of your operating expenditures. And you know, what this means is as of June 30, the city theoretically could have operated for 3.5 months without any additional revenue sources. So this is a strong fund balance. But again, with you all being a June 30 year end, that fund balance is very much needed to cover expenditures during the months of July through October. And you know, not to belabor the point, but we have a slide here. You know, one comment that I'm often asked is, as long as we're able to pay our current obligations, you know, what's the point of having a strong fund balance? You know, and there are several reasons for that. One of which is what I just mentioned. Property taxes represent a significant portion of your revenues, and they're cyclical in nature. You're not getting property taxes every month. So again, you need that fund balance to get you through those months when your revenues are lower than they are at other times. Other reasons to cover for significant emergencies and unanticipated expenditures. It provides you all with the flexibility for discretionary spending. There's potential for better interest rates when you all go out and market, which again would save you all money. And again, last but certainly not least, it's important in uncertain economic times. And you know, we've seen that, right? You know, from the financial crisis in 2008 to the global pandemic in 2020 to weather-related issues that we sometimes have to deal with being a coastal community. If I'm in your shoes, it gives me it's comforting to know that you all are in a strong position to be able to withstand such events. So again, congratulations to you all on that. One final item, again, is just required communications that the auditing standards, you know, again, requires me to communicate to you all. With you all receiving a clean opinion, no audit findings, the information on this slide is essentially a formality. But again, we received full cooperation from management and staff. There were no significant issues discussed with management that would affect the financial statements. There were no uncorrected misstatements. And again, we are independent of the city as required by governmental audit standards. And with that, unless anybody has any questions, that concludes my portion. I'll kind of punt to Alan for him to give you all a more in-depth overview of the numbers. But you know, I've tried to hit the highlights. What I think the most important to you all is obviously a lot of information in this report. But I do want to thank your staff again for all their hard work. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to serve you all and look forward to working in the future.
All right, Alan, you're up next.
The detail you saved for that presentation, I mentioned my presentation, go a little further to the detail about providing a general overview of the city's finances as of June 30th, 2024. Also, the ACFR will be available online on our website starting tomorrow. So out of that, for the public to view documents. David mentioned the management discussion analysis is probably the best section of the ACFR to read. It provides narrative overview and analysis of financial activities of the city for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024. This is the city's net position. This is the city's balance sheet for our government-wide financials. As you can see, the city's net position is 58.3 million, which increased by 6.5 million from last year. And may have noticed that the city's unrestricted net position was a negative 4.3 million. There's an accounting standard that requires the city's pension liability to be reported on the city's financials, even though the city's pension has been administered through the state of South Carolina. If we take that part out, the net pension liability of 18.4 million, and this results in a position unrestricted net balance of 14 million. I'll highlight the total cash position was 40 million, which compared to 30.1 or 30.3 million last year. This was mostly due to the issuance of the $7.1 million hospitality accommodation fee revenue bond which happened this time last year, January 2024. The city's long-term indebtedness includes accrued vacation and net pension liability had increased 4.8 million from last year. This mostly is due to the $7.1 million revenue bond issuance, plus debt that we had to pay off during the year, which led to that net increase. Also, the city's bond rating, Standard & Poor's still at AA and an AA2 from Moody's. And property taxes support 38.7% of the governmental services to citizens and communities during the fiscal year. Here is the city statement of activities or our income statement, so our government-wide financials. The city's net position increased by the 6.6 million there from last year. Let's hit some of the highlights on the revenue side for the government-wide increase, 5.8 million or about 17%. Charges for services increased 1.3 million. 8%, mostly from the development growth increasing from business licenses of 1.1 million. Also, our operating grants and contributions increased to net 1.1 million. David mentioned most of that was from our ARPA grant revenue recognized during a year of $968,000 increase. Our capital grants and contributions increased by $915,000, which is a result of our capital grants related to Allison Road project as they began the construction phase. Also, our downtown drainage projects as they continue throughout the engineering and design phase. Our taxes increased a net 1.4 million. Property tax increased 1.1 million from growth in assessed property values, and also a combination of hospitality taxes increased 373,000 as tourism activity improved throughout the year. And our other general revenues increased a net of a little over $1 million. The city recognized an increase in investment earnings of 960,000 due to a rising interest rate market in the year.
Just an important distinction on the last two bullets. It says taxes increase, tax revenue increase. There's a difference.
And for government-wide expenses, overall expenses increased 2.6 million or 8.4%. This was mostly, some of it was from law enforcement expenses increased 1.7 million. That's from a combination of personnel benefit increases of 631,000, along with 2 additional school resource officers funded through a state grant. Also recording amortization expenses related to the city's implementation of our GASB 87 leases. Also, fire and emergency expenses increased 242,000. That was mostly due to the repairs made on the wrecked fire truck, which was covered by insurance during the fiscal year. Here is our statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. This is our income statement on the fund level. And it's kind of hard to see, but this shows our major funds, general fund, Q fund, capital project fund, arts and tourism fund, ARPA fund, and stormwater fund. And all the smaller funds get grouped into this other governmental funds. As you can see, a breakdown. I'll provide a little further breakdown of each individual fund. David mentioned general fund is the main operating fund. General fund revenues increased 4.6 million. The property tax revenues increased 916,000. That's due to a growing tax base. Licenses and permits increased 866,000. That's due to record growth for business licenses. Also, an increase of 903,000 for intergovernmental revenue. We received for the first time a $264,000 state grant for 2 additional SROs in the public schools. Also, a $252,000 increase for the town of Royal for shared costs related to fire services, and a $100,000 grant for opioid abatement program, which is all through the Beaver County.
Alan, is that state grant for the additional resource officers? Is that for a year or 2 years?
It's year by year. We have gotten the second year, so we'll. But the first year included 2 SROs plus 2 vehicles and equipment as well. Going forward, it'll be mostly personnel expenses. The charges for services increased $695,000. City made a change effective back in January 2023 to charge residential and garbage collection fees on their annual property taxes rather than on the monthly water bills. Interest earnings revenues increased $386,000 due to rising interest rates during the year. Miscellaneous revenues increased $681,000 due to one-time revenues from property sales of $383,000 from land at Beaufort Commerce Park and $390,000 from insurance proceeds from the fire truck repair. On the expense side. Expense side, general fund expenditures increased $2.2 million or 9%. Law enforcement saw the $1.1 million increase. So that was from personnel benefits of $576,000, which includes the 2 SRO officers. Also, the police department added 10 leased vehicles outfitted with equipment to replace older vehicles for additional $313,000, along with $86,000 increase in capital purchases, including those 2 new vehicles from the state funded SRO grant. And fire emergency increased $786,000 from mostly some of that was from personal benefits of $847,000 and the $385,000 repair made of the wrecked fire truck that was covered through insurance, and a decrease of $391,000 for fire services support from local fire districts that was budgeted in our general governmental going forward.
Alan, real quick, got a question on that. And maybe this is just clarification, not understanding it right. So the government-wide expense highlights fire and emergency increased $242,000, and then the general fund expenditure highlights that it increased $786. I would think if there was a difference in the numbers, the higher would reflect on the government-wide expense and not the general fund. Is that right? Or how is it more in the general fund than it would be in the entire government-wide expense highlights?
Yeah, good question. For the government-wide includes our leases, maybe David can help me out a little more. It includes leases and other payments. Some of those were charged to the fire department and the general governmental for the fund statements, but on the government-wide, some of those lease payments get made as debt payments, like principal and interest amounts that be paid that way. So it's
Yeah, at the fund level, I don't want to get too deep into the government accounting. We can talk all night about this, but at the fund level, the fund level, you don't record capital assets, you record long-term debt. That's recorded as an expense. And at the need-wide level, there's a reconciliation that takes that out of expense. And for example, if you bought a capital asset from the general fund, at the fund level, that will be an expense. At the entity-wide level, that's taken out of expense and put in as a capital asset, because there's no capital assets at the fund level. So we have a reconciliation item. We have a reconciliation schedule on page D4 of the financial statements that will kind of take you through the reconciliation and get you to kind of walk you through where we're going from the fund level to the entity line. So, but again, and with debt, there's no long-term debt recorded in the general fund. It's just recorded at the entity-wide level. So when we pay that debt in the general fund, it's recorded as an expense, but at the entity-wide level, we have to reduce that long-term liability. So it's taken out of expense and reduces the long-term liability. So oftentimes you will see differences between expenses at the entity-wide level and the fund. That's just the difference of the method
And
of
it could
accounting.
be less in the government-wide expense and more in the general fund, as well as the opposite.
Yes.
Okay.
More breakdown for some of our major funds. Our 52 funds, we expended $21,000, about $22,000 less than last year. Increases associated with security improvements at City Hall. Revenues were $185,000, or about $53,000 higher than prior year due to the rising interest rates during the fiscal year. Capital project fund expended $4.2 million, which was $3.6 million more than last year. This is due to more capital projects in the construction phase rather than the design and engineering phase. Most of the current year activity results in 3 projects: engineering for Washington Street Park project, engineering and construction for Southside Park, and the large stormwater drainage projects at the point. Combined with most of the capital expenditures throughout the year. Overall, right now, we have 12 active capital projects. I guess as of June 30, we have those numbers at various stages of completion. The Parks and Tourism Fund expended 4.4 million, which is 583,000 more than previous year. And revenues were 5.4 million, which was $320,000 more than last year. The revenues is due to increased tourism activity. The hospitality accommodation taxes are still coming in strong.
On the TIF two, is there any sunset on expending the funds?
As long as we have budget for the funds, we have that time available, but we do need to make sure we're prioritizing some of those TIF two funds. Obviously, those expenditures been rather late. The ARPA funds expended 891,000. That's what's related to the purchase of a works bucket truck, support to local partners for local housing and educational cybersecurity initiatives. Revenues were 1.7 million from the federal grant, along with interest. Unearned revenues, shown as a liability on our balance sheet is 4.4 million for June 30th. And then our stormwater fund operating revenues were 1.3 million, which is $170,000 less than fiscal year 23. Revenues remain stable, and stormwater fees expenditures were 1.1 million, includes $513,000 for debt service. And other financing uses comprised of $232,000 for transfers out for our capital project fund for drainage projects throughout the city. Have you answered any questions or thoughts later on?
This is a question, going back to Mr. Irwin's presentation. The pardon me, this is it. Yeah, the balance of the general fund as of June 30, 2024, is that exclusive of ARPA funds?
That's just the general fund.
Just the general fund?
Correct. ARPA is its own separate fund. That is just the general fund.
Yeah, I understand. Only just to make sure that as we look at those projections, we keep improving the balance of our capital funds, we see, I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, that 5-year summary slide that I had, that was just for the general fund.
Any other questions from council? Any questions from public? Comments? Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Okay.
Thank you.
Very good report. Okay, next, a discussion item. Memorandum of understanding with the Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust for administration of the housing repair program. We have JJ Sauvé and Claude Hex from the Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust. Claude, you want to come up? You want to sit in front?
Good evening, council. On page 35 of your agenda packet, you have some background information on this particular undertaking. Tonight, we want to look at a memorandum of understanding that's been proposed by Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust, reviewed by staff, the city attorney, for administering a housing repair program. You'll remember back in September of this year, Paul came in front of council in a work session. We talked about at a very high level what administering a program like this could look like, and the fact that he does have experience with this. And this is part of our operating agreement. The purpose behind entering into the Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust is to provide us with technical guidance on this type of program. I'm not going to run through the whole history of how we got here. It's all in the background information, but I do want to emphasize that this conversation really started around the old Commons and Northwest Quadrant neighborhoods. And that conversation started long before I joined the city last January. And it started as one conversation, and it's really split into two programs. that the city staff have been looking into. The first program is providing housing repair assistance for critical needs in homes currently resided in here in the city. And the second prong of that is providing housing repair assistance in dilapidated homes, many uninhabited and primarily located in parts of the historic district. So tonight, this MOU that council is looking at and that Paul's going to discuss with you, we're focusing on category 1 there, the providing housing repair assistance for critical needs and homes currently resided in. And I just wanted to lay that foundation for why we're here tonight, what this program is meant to address. And we're going to, I'm sure, talk more about this program and the historical preservation program in our strategic planning retreat next week. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Claude, kind of give you some background from their perspective and go through the MOU and answer any questions.
Thank you, JJ. We are very pleased to be having this meeting after our last discussion last September. We've been working hard with city staff, to and Scott both, on how we craft a program that is fair and one that addresses the needs of citizens of the city of Newport. Our board was asked to set aside $100,000 to put into a fund. The board approved that unanimously. Those funds are sitting aside, waiting for the formation of a separate checking account to deal with how we actually do the renovations and how we pay for it. We looked at the city of Hilton Head, or town of Hilton Head, as well as Bluffton, for some of the guidelines that they looked at and some of the things that they thought were important in preparing their program, which is very similar to this. In talking with the city and talking about how we would do this, we wanted to be fair. So we wanted to open this to all citizens of the city of Beaufort. You must reside within the city limits. The house that you would like us to take a look at must be owner occupied. We chose not to look at anything that wasn't owner occupied because we're trying to also follow state guidelines and state resources. I think we mentioned at our last meeting, Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust has been received sponsor status for the state housing repair fund. We are next week going to get the environmental accreditation we need to have to look at any house older than 1978. We expect to have that accreditation within the next 3 weeks. And looking at the other aspects of what we were looking for was to address issues that are things that are health and safety related first. So we want to try and take a look at how we structure something that we call emergency or critical need. If someone has a roof and water is coming in every time it rains, that is a critical need. We are in the process now of putting together an application. It very much follows along what state guidelines require. The application will be put out into the public, both in paper form, but also through social media and on our website as well. We hope that it'll be on the city's website as well, so that everyone can access that application. We know this money is going to go by very quickly. We know that people are going to be concerned about whether we are being fair, so we want to be totally transparent as we do this. This is going to be on a first come, first served basis, and it's going to be a rolling application. So we won't stop taking applications. We will tell people once money has run out, if they are in line, we're going to tell them you are in line, and hopefully there will be a second allocation coming down the road later. We would like for this to be a perpetual fund. Our board has talked about our giving a perpetual donation on an annual basis. That's something we can talk about in the future once we see how successful we are here. We expect that this is going to be, in many instances, life-saving for some of our residents who are really having a tough time. Probably the biggest challenge that we're going to face is the heirs property issue. Where the person who lives in the house does not necessarily own the house. That's going to be an issue that's going to be difficult for people to understand, but not unusual if you lived here for 6 months. So we look forward to putting together, working with the city, working with staff, and putting together the application and putting together the process. We expect that we're going to use local contractors, local labor to address these issues. We expect what we're going to see is roofs, windows, ramps, flooring, bathrooms. We are not going to do any cosmetic work. This is going to be structural work, except for the actual structure of the building itself. That is an engineering process that requires a lot of money and a lot of expertise that we don't have. So we hope that we address the needs of as many people as we can get in this fund. We greatly appreciate the fact that you all have put up money and have joined us in this effort. We look forward to a really successful program and one that we can talk about replicating in the future.
Could you repeat what you said about the heirs properties?
We are not going to provide dollars into a home that is not owner occupied. So if there's a renter there, that's going to be a disqualifying factor. And what we want to try and avoid, a homeowner who's been negligent in deferring maintenance as a renter. We come in, we fix whatever's wrong, and then they boot the renter out and sell the house. So that's what we're going to try and avoid. But heirs property issues are everywhere here. It's a major issue.
So if an heir is, who's an owner, not the total owner, but an owner is living in the property, does that disqualify that person, or do they need you need consent of all the heirs to proceed?
We need the consent of all the owners.
And this covers that, I think, as it says, it has to have everybody, all the owners.
Yeah.
Councilman Mitchell, beyond the conversations with the housing trusts, I've attended a couple of different heirs property symposiums in North Carolina the past year. From a legal perspective, CLEs, and this is it's an issue that's being dealt with all across eastern North Carolina, all across South Carolina, especially here in the coastal region. And I'm hoping that there are some organizations starting to see more here outside the Charleston area that we could partner with to point folks to help with heirs issues, but it's really from a legal standpoint, it's a standpoint of how.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. I've been Penn Senate's representative trying to help folks with heirs property for a long time, and it's a challenging situation. So yeah, I'll follow up with you. So if there's any help we can get on trying to.
So one of the things that the trust has done is we have submitted an application to Federal Home Bank of Atlanta for specifically to address heirs property issues. We should hear about that. We hope by the end of January, maybe the first part of February. If we're fortunate enough, those dollars can only go towards figuring out who the owner is. And then the second part of this grant is that once that is determined, there must be a will and an estate plan after that. However, the occupant, the homeowner pays nothing. This would all come from this grant. So keeping our fingers crossed. If we don't get it this time, we're going to apply the next time to keep going. We know there are 2 other organizations that have also applied those same funds. I also want us to mention that one of the things that will be a contributing factor is making sure that the taxes are current. We certainly don't want to put city and trust funds into a home where taxes are collected. There's danger that the house might get sold in tax.
Well, as a fiscal agent, y'all are gonna have an interest bearing account.
Qualify, you made a comment about non-cosmetic and structural issues. So were you indicating that like foundation issues and stuff like that would be excluded?
That's correct.
So if they make repairs to the house, it's gonna fall down.
Well, we don't believe that we have the expertise to address foundation issues. What we are doing is we're looking at what other entities have done, and they have addressed roofs, they have addressed doors, windows, they've addressed bathrooms, but not gone into the structural component of the house. If we can figure out a way to pay for that some other way, we'd be happy to do that. Just, we thought for this particular program, you can spend the entire amount of the fund on one structure.
If you determine that a house has structural concerns, is that automatically disqualifying?
If we go by the state guidelines, yes, it would. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't, once we get our environmental clearance from the state, that we couldn't then go to the state and try and achieve one of their programs for structural issues. They have those set aside, but that's a state process, not a local.
Okay, so one question I have is, under the repair eligibility requirements, it says, demolition exclusively for safety purposes. So we're requiring that there's owner occupancy. Why would demolition be one of the eligible criteria? They wouldn't be, they don't have money to demo it, then they wouldn't be, spending money to build a new house. So I guess I question why we would spend our dollars on demolitions. Because surely if you're demoing it, nobody's gonna live there. So,
Well, it's been our experience, and we've seen this firsthand. There are plenty of people who are living in homes that should have some type of demolition on the interior of the home in order to repairs. I'll give you a great example.
Porches.
So this is-
Stairwells, it's not the whole house.
Not the whole house.
This isn't, that wasn't intended. It meant that something had to come off, maybe an addition or stairwell or porch.
so this is talking about demolitions to certain portions of the house and not
Correct.
demolition in general. It would not be a whole home.
Demolition like we talk about for.
Is there potentially a need to clarify that a little bit further for the applicant?
You certainly can. I'll give you a great example of what we saw. One house, there had been an addition put on. Wood for the addition had been taken from the structure of the balance of the house. That part was never permitted, was never approved. And so we ended up looking at demolishing just that portion, so that we could come back with something that was structural, something that would hold up a wall, that would be something that would be safe and would meet code.
That makes sense, and I guess even in my mind, I can see where maybe you'd have to do a partial demolition of the house. The way I read this was
Whole structure.
the whole structure, and I'm like, I don't know
We're
that
happy.
these dollars should be paying for demolitions.
We're happy to
So,
clarify that.
okay, and then there on the homeowner eligibility requirements, the last bullet point says any sale and or transfer within 3 years of construction completion. So my question is, if I live in a house and I'm the owner and I apply for these funds and I get awarded, my house is restored, and then in 1 month, I decide to go somewhere else and rent it out. I don't see that being an issue here because all we talk about is any sale or transfer of ownership. So I would think maybe there'd be value, and correct me if I'm wrong, in adding a change of use clause just to cover so that, okay, now not only do you have to own it and live in it, but after it's repaired, there's a period of time in which you need to stay in the house and not just leave and rent it out.
We can certainly clarify that. Our intention was if you choose to sell the house within the first 3 years, then you have to pay the money back. That was the intention.
So put it in the context of a property owner who does repairs on their house and then ends up having to go into assisted living. And the family rents out the house for a period of time while they're either recuperating or end of life. If they rent that house, the entire amount then would be due and payable. Which with the rent money, they would not have that unless they are then forced to sell the house. So be careful about.
So
the
is it, so are you
consequences.
saying, I absolutely see the point. So are you saying that it would be better to not add the clause or just to be very careful in how you clarify that change of use? Because there are exceptions to when it would be appropriate to change the use without having to pay back what was given.
Well, constitutionally, and I am not an attorney and I am not acting as an attorney, but rental usage or use of rental in your property is an owner enjoyment. So if you don't sell the house and you put a clause in here requiring them to reimburse the grant when they go to rent it, it's probably going to generate a sale of the house. So I would say it would be an unintended consequences of what we want to do. We want the property owners to, and their families to maintain the house and keep ownership of the house and keep them in the district or keep them in the city. So if that clause, they won't be generating enough money to pay it back, number one. So it's going to generate another consequence unintended, and it's probably going to mean the sale. If they end up going into assisted living or can no longer be kept in the house. Unforeseen, of course, potentially, but.
And I think the intention was, we did not want to put money into a house and have someone flip the house 2 months later. And then walk away with money that the city had provided for repairs. So that's why did we put the clause in there. If you choose to do that, if you choose to sell within that first 3 years, then the money must come back. The only exception, and we put it in the memorandum, was from the death of him. If the owner dies within that 3-year period of time.
But somebody could get your house repaired and rent it out.
For a short term.
I don't think we even thought about that circumstance. We were thinking the whole time this was going to be an owner who was going to stay in the house. But I understand your circumstance. If you have an issue where the primary owner has to leave for whatever reason and they rent it. For us, I think we would look at it and say that's not a change of ownership. The original owner still owns the house. Therefore, it wouldn't trigger the requirement within the 3 years for those funds to come back.
We can conduct further research, into that with the city attorney. I know there's guidance documents available.
The state's gotta have some verbiage on here with covenants, restrictions, because your comment about short-term rentals is trigger concern. Somebody could possibly do that and still retain ownership. That would certainly not be the intent of right now.
We highly encourage you to look into that. That I'm going to, we'll work with Claude, and I'm sure he has Claude resources. Housing language, and I do.
For the benefit of the public, could you go over some of the qualifications in terms of the maximum funding and the qualified, how the residents qualify?
The residents will be qualifying on an income basis. And that income will be determined by a process that they go through with us. We're very used to and very familiar with income verifications, how we do that. We probably employ a third party to help us with part of that. Assuming that they meet the income qualifications, assuming that the taxes are paid on the house, assuming that they can prove ownership. Then we take a look at the actual issue itself. How much do we think it's going to cost? Does it comply with what we are doing? We want very much for these funds to apply to those residents who don't have any other way to pay for this repair. That to me would be the ideal situation. And at the end of the day, those are the people that you want standing here saying thank you, because I didn't have a way to do The good thing about looking at this program, the way we're looking at it is, once we have access to state funds, we can then guide more people to say, this doesn't particularly fit the city model, but it would fit the state model. So what we want is, we also want people who have an intention to remain in the community. We want to make these repairs, want them to enjoy those repairs. We want them to be a part of the community for many years to come. With respect to having to prove home ownership, having to prove their income, those are all things that we're very familiar with doing. And I think we're going to be flooded. I think we're going to have more people than we can possibly do when we talk with Scott about this. That's why he suggested that we go with a rolling application, so that there's always an application process out there. It may be waiting for money, but you know that you're at least in line. You know that you at least have what it takes. I think one of the things that we don't want to do is we don't want to do a cosmetic repair. We don't want to do a repair for somebody who's truly not in need, who's truly not qualified. The purpose of trying to do this as well is to attract some additional funding from the state that would connect the city to try and help, especially in our there's property issues, especially in the historic district. Things are much more complicated, much more expensive. How can we leverage what we're doing here to entice the state to help us in those areas as well? We believe that we'll come back to you with exactly how we leverage these funds and what the result is. And I think it'll be a number that everybody is happy with. But I think most of all, the community will be happy.
Can you share, when we go live with this, your plans and how you roll it out, how do you make the community aware of programs?
So once we work with JJ, work with his staff on the application itself, we'll do about 30 days prior to that application going live. We'll do a social media blitz. Say this is coming. Here's who can qualify. Here's what it is. Get ready. If you think you qualify, here are the things that you would have to put in an application. So if you want to get ahead of the game and start gathering those documents now, people greatly underestimate the difficulty in getting proof of earnings, proof of income. You think about it, we all do it online now, and there's a lot of people who still do it by paper. It's difficult to do. Yes, sir.
One thing about doing it online, a lot of these people are really in need. They're not on social media.
I follow up.
So we hope we're going to get some newspaper coverage. We hope we're going to get some TV coverage. We are going to have hard copy applications as well as online applications. So people can come to our office, they can come to the city, they can get an application they can fill out in person.
I had something on newsletter too.
We can use all of our communication channels, and in addition to that, we are blessed to be a city that has very strong neighborhood associations. And so we have very good communication channels because of the association. So that's one avenue that we use to get that word out as well. So by every means we can think of, we'll get the word out on that. And like Claude said, I agree with him. I think there will be plenty of media coverage on it as well.
Yeah, just kind of puts up what Neil was saying, is the question I have is kind of leading, because I think a lot of these folks, maybe I don't have any data to prove this, but I just suspect that a lot of the folks who need it may not be very social media savvy.
Well, one of the other areas that will help is that last year we gave 8 grants out. 6 of those entities work in the city. They will be among the first that we will tell, hey, this is coming. They will probably call us and say, we have residents who can use all the money right now. So I think that communication, letting people know. Also, we're going to talk about how we allow people to come in and have us help them do the application. That's very difficult sometimes with people who are not used to it. They don't understand what we're asking for. And it's a process. So we hope that we're going to get enough help to do that. And that can be done at our office.
This conversation also came up when I was meeting with some of the volunteer legal services here in the area. They wanted us to let them know when the applications came available, that may be a service that they can also provide to individuals.
Was the MOU with the county's workforce housing just like for suggested language?
Yes, that was just an example of an
Okay.
existing contract.
Good. So I was just gonna point out, in there was workforce housing was defined as, 30 to 120%, whereas in our application process, we're very clear that this is for, those who make under 80% AMI.
The sample that JJ included was one that was done with DCDC.
In the county, right?
That was for residences outside of Hilton. So they went to a much higher scale.
We just wanted to provide council with an example of an what it's out in place for comparison.
And that has been a great example of the need here. We thought that it would take roughly a year, maybe a year and a half, to find 21 homes that CCDC could purchase. It took 91 days. And they completed the last purchase in the summer. So, the need is there. I think this is a great example of your leadership and the ability to look at something and really address it. And we're very pleased to partner with you.
Any other questions? Any from the public? Dan? Man, you come up here and give us your name and address for the record.
He's gonna give us application. There was all the people.
We got my application. Actually, I wouldn't qualify.
Okay. I just know you know the neighbors.
I have, of course, I have a lot to say about the housing repair program, but I have a few thank yous first. I want to thank Scott. You and I met, I think, February of last year and discussed getting a budget line item. Then the council passed a budget line item. Then it was added to later, and now it's been added to again. So now we have some pretty significant money to work with. So I'd like to thank the council and JJ and Scott for the work that you've done. It's been impressive. A couple of things I'd like to suggest. The group that met, I think JJ headed it up. I want to suggest that you make sure that there are people from the neighborhood who know the neighborhood and know who lives in a house and who know who needs help. Because I think having other organizations involved that don't know those things is not really helpful. So making sure that there's diversity and neighborhood representation is very important in that partnership group that I think is what you called it. The other thing that city council did, which I think JJ led again under Scott's direction, is the housing analysis that you put in to the comprehensive plan. And that specifically relates to this type of housing repair program, if you read those sections. So we've made a commitment. It's now up to us to do it right. The existing codes you're going to have to look at, because some of these homes were built in the 1900s, before 1950, before there were codes. Wouldn't it be better to get them halfway up rather than get it eliminated by the amount of money that's needed to bring them all the way up? So that's going to be something ought to be thought about here at the building department with the codes. The existing codes might be a problem. The regular meetings and regular reports that Claude's got in here are very important so that the public knows and so the city council knows how many permits have been issued, how many projects have been started, how many have been completed, what they were. This would be a good place to report to the city council in the community development report you get monthly. It's basically the same thing. And Claude's report could be appended to it or summarized in that report. If you've looked at that report at the city council, they have his report reflected there. I would suggest would be a good place. Then I'd like to come to 2 points that are bothersome. Mike McPhee brought up one. That's the foundation. We've got to address foundations for 2 reasons. One, Mike's point was that you repair the rest of the house and then it falls down. Go look up and down Congress Street and Washington Street and go look on Monson and you'll see houses that are going to fall down even if we repair the roof. So we've got to address that issue. So I would say don't put foundations in as an exception, the way it is drafted right now. Take that out if you possibly can, because there may be places where we need to do a foundation and where we can get the money to do the foundation. I could quote various sources, including the Bible, about foundations and building on rocks. Right? And think about it. You all know what I'm talking about. The other thing that was curious, and maybe Mr. Hicks can tell us, why is electricity an exception? Because if you're doing HVAC systems new to renovate a house, you're gonna have to deal with it.
The entire electrical
Yeah, it
system.
says electrical repair exclusive of total rewires is included.
Yeah,
Right.
So you can do anything that's adjunct to a repair that's done that requires electrical, that's acceptable. It's just not rewiring an entire house.
Well, you might have to.
But you're not going to, because it's too expensive.
Well, that's an issue that he would take up
Well,
with this grant.
by this grant, maybe a state grant, we could find another source or a rehab, a historic preservation loan
I
or
would be
something
careful
else.
about eliminating things, that's what I'm saying. Because when you get into the construction and you find out, we've got to redo the whole house because of code. We have to redo the whole house for HVAC. Then you're gonna hit this MOU that says, no, we can't do that. Just be careful. Just be careful about that.
You're gonna hit the cap long before you can.
And I think your point about rental and people going to assisted living is going to be applicable.
I know.
Most of the people that I know in the Northwest Quadrant that need this are single widows and widowers. Okay, so, and they're most of them are over 75 years old, but at least over 65 or 62. Whatever the criteria is that you use. And they're single. So they're not a family of 4. There's a few of families. The other thing I'm not as afraid of as some people put out there is the heirs property. I've done a title exam where we came up with 27 heirs. We got permission from all of them to do something with the property. So don't be so afraid of that boogeyman of heirs property. That's not that. It is a problem. You have to work through it. You have to get permissions. And in some of the cities and towns, they've done it there's an owner occupied property. It's an heirs property. They have 27 heirs. If that owner can go out and get affidavits from all 26 others to allow him to, or she or he, whichever way you want to say it, to deal with this grant, then that's sufficient. You need some kind of permission from the heirs, but you don't need to do a full title or a court case to determine who has the power. You can do it by having a regulation in the MOU if you want, or in the process of application, that they can do it by permissive affidavits.
so the way, just real quick, the way that it's worded right in here is applications must have the consent of all owners. So the applicant must prove owner occupancy, and then you just have to have the consent of all of the owners, which could just be exactly
An
what you
affidavit,
said.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you probably have to show a tracing. I have a file to stick on the 27 people. But, you have to trace it,
The chain.
the chain of title, but you don't have to change the title. You don't have to get deeds from all 27. So don't be so afraid of it that you don't do heirs properties, because a lot of these people are one of the heirs and they're the only one that cares about the property or has any interest in it, and the others can't afford anything. And so they allow one person to stay there. And if they, by affidavit, by consent, whichever way you want to say it, they can do that, then you have a viable situation. So don't be too afraid of it. And there are agencies, including the one in Charleston, as we know, that can help with the heirs tracing.
I thought you were gonna be our first legal assistant volunteer.
I have volunteered to help with applications. Hopefully our application, as I've talked to Mr. Hicks about, will be more towards a one-page application and not the 35 steps application that the state has.
Hey, could I get you to put your name and address for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't do that. Daniel Blackman, 1010 Duke Street, Northwest Quadrant, Beaufort.
So everybody online, there's.
Real quick, I want to build on something that he said, then get clarification on another. So, one, you were talking about, the applications and once the project starts being a part of our monthly report, and maybe, I don't know how hard this would be, but maybe it's something that we consider adding into the GIS portal. And then this way you have an opportunity to see the projects and where they're at in the process and how much money was spent on them. As just another way of.
I think once you have an approved project, you can do that in the application stage.
Right, yeah, once you have a project that started and has a plan, once it's permitted, right? And then the other thing for clarification, you had brought up the housing impact analysis, and just to be clear, that was for the state allocated funds that we get for tax and not necessarily the repair program. So it's good to have on file regardless, but the money that we're approving from the state tax is still governed by that statute, and it's a completely separate pot of money with different criteria than the repair program.
But it does have, that analysis does have housing repair in it.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else from the public want to comment or have a question? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move on to the second.
I just want to recognize Claude and his board at the Jasper Housing Trust. This is a program that they graciously volunteered to help us with and really have carried a lot of the water and will continue to. And increased our contributions by 66%, which is pretty significant. And so I just want to say thank you to Claude and his board. It's become a part of their mission set that initially when we thought of the Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust before we even named it that, we didn't know it was going to be growing, but it's just the kind of programs I think we need. And so I want to say thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay,
We're happy to be part of it.
Council, our next steps on this, we have some significant notes here. We'll meet with Jasper Housing Trust, city attorney there, general counsel. Take all this feedback, and the goal would be to bring you a finalized memorandum of understanding for adoption sometime within the first half of this year, preferably quarterly.
All right, second discussion item for tonight is a request for memorialization and renaming of Southside Loop. Scott, you want to put us in this?
Yeah, I'd be glad to, Mayor. This is an item that was requested by Councilman Lipsitz. We have been talking to you for some time about this. Clayton Cooler is a longtime former employee of the city of Beaufort. And since Councilman Lipsitz asked that he can say that, I'll allow him to speak to it.
Yeah. Clayton Cooler, he was head of public works for 45 plus years, city of Beaufort. Where the wastewater plant is, he was head of public works at the time. It was when it was built and it was converted into Southside Park. And when you go into Southside Park, as you make a right when you go in there, the loop that we created right there at the playground
I'd like to propose that we rename that in honor of Lake Cooler.
That's
Lake
the link with
Cooler,
the parking, right?
right where the parking and the playground and the pavilion are.
Swing somewhere back on.
And it just loops right in there and comes back to the main road in there inside the park. In that section, I would like to propose that we name it in honor of Clayton Cooler.
We have with us his son-in-law, Colonel Warren Parker. Well,
Would you like to say anything?
Well, family's honored by Neil's request and hopefully we do favorably. Ms. Rogers here could be
You want to come up over,
a witness to Clayton.
you want to come up over here with the public,
Yeah,
and give your name and address?
Sorry. Those were just your practice comments.
That's right.
This is from Warren. Warren Parker. Well, my address,
Yeah.
21 Division Street, Beaufort, South Carolina. Family's honored by Neil's statements and requests for this. It's honored to have the loop named after Clayton. He was devoted to the city of Beaufort, worked here for almost 50 years. And anybody that knew him knew he was the first one here and the last one to leave. And as I said, Ms. Rogers over here can be a witness to Clayton's
Yes.
Dedication to the city. She saw it in over the years. And Linda Roper actually started here in the city, I think, under Clayton and the department when she first joined the city. So we appreciate it and hope that council will support it.
FYI, he passed away about 12 years ago, I believe it was, 11,
Yeah.
12 years ago.
Thanks.
And I made a statement on.
Yes, ma'am.
Katie, can you come out and give us your name and address
All right.
for the record?
Edie Rogers, I live in 7A Rising Tide Drive in Beaufort. What an honorable thing to do. There's nothing warm and fuzzy about South Side Loop as a street name, to tell you the truth. Clayton Cooler was an icon in this city. And his loss was a great loss to this city because he's the only man I knew, maybe some of his employees, but he was the only one I knew who really knew where every pipe and every wire and whatever was under the streets in the city of Beaufort. Because he literally started, if you will, at the bottom, and that may not sound so good, but he started as just a regular employee and worked his way up to be Director of Public Works for years. And I think it would be an honor if we could follow through with this suggestion that we named it truly Southside Loop. Does that do anything for you? Let's honor this man who served this community and served it well for a very long time. Thank you.
But this is something that council supports, and I question that we're close to what we want. That's what we do on this road. And so, just by virtue of a resolution to memorialize the renaming, we could rename the road, but we didn't know what.
I think Clayton Cooler Loop, it's obvious.
Cooler sport. And I'll donate the signs that have to be made out of like a fire hydrant.
I support it. Yeah, I can support
Well, I
it.
think we're all in favor. We just need to bring it from council for a vote.
You know, like Cooler Way.
Oh,
No,
I like it,
big
but
old name.
we need to pull
There are a lot
down
of coolers in this area. You might want to name it playground.
Yeah.
We could just.
So there's no doubt.
Clayton Cooler Loop, so,
Okay, fine.
and we'll bring that to you in a subsequent meeting of council. Adoption of our resolution.
Maybe the cultural district will help me with the fire hydrant name sign, street sign.
I think there might be some success in that.
Okay, that's all we have.
Might get a road one day.
Gone ahead and there's no other public comment. We're gonna go ahead and adjourn and we'll reconvene at 7 o'clock on a regular meeting. Thank y'all for coming. Appreciate it.